Welcome everyone! I am so incredibly thrilled to have you here for this explainer. If you're joining me today, you probably already have a deep appreciation for the unknown, the totally inexplicable, and the legendary. Today, we're going to unpack humanity's absolute fascination with some of the most enduring enigmas of our past. We're zeroing in on two massively famous historical mysteries, the supposedly deadly curse of King Tutankhamun and the incredibly elusive lost city of Atlantis. So let's just get right into it.
There's this really profound thought that I absolutely love. It goes, people don't want to believe in a world without miracles because this means a world without soul. It just perfectly hits the nail on the head, right? It validates exactly why we are so drawn to these deep historical mysteries. Myths and legends, they aren't just fairy tales. They're the mysterious, enduring legacy of ancient cultures. They connect us directly to our ancestors' desperate desire to find meaning and maybe a little magic in a massive, unpredictable universe.
Okay, let's dive into this. History's greatest mysteries. While we all love the magic of a good story, today we're using modern historical research and archaeology to get to the absolute bottom of them. So how do these myths get so huge in the first place? Well, it almost always starts with oral tradition. Humans have literally always sought explanations for massive catastrophes or extraordinary misfortune. But, as you can imagine, as a story is retold generation after generation, it kind of acts like a giant game of telephone. It changes. The heroes become more heroic, the powers become way more powerful, and the events totally supernatural. But here's the thing to remember. Behind almost every single grand myth lies a tiny, hidden kernel of historical truth, just waiting to be uncovered.
Tutankhamun's curse and truth. We're traveling back in time to the sun-baked sands of ancient Egypt to look at the legendary boy king. Let's walk through the chronological breadcrumbs of this unbelievable 1922 discovery. After years of absolutely grueling searching in the Valley of the Kings, archaeologist Howard Carter finally gets lucky. His team uncovers a secret cavity with a descending stairway. He immediately fires off a telegram to his financial sponsor, Lord Carnarvon, and Carnarvon just rushes to Egypt. But shortly after gazing upon one of the greatest archaeological finds in human history, Carnarvon suddenly dies. And just like that, the gripping suspense of a deadly ancient curse begins to unfold.
I mean, just imagine the sheer, unadulterated excitement of receiving this telegram. At last, have made wonderful discovery in Valley. Stop. A magnificent tomb with seals intact. Stop. It is a moment of pure archaeological triumph. But, as we know, this monumental find quickly turned incredibly dark. With Lord Carnarvon becoming the first major casualty, the world press just went wild. They weren't just reporting on the gold anymore. They were reporting on the deadly curse of the Pharaoh, a story that profoundly shook the entire excavation team.
And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer physical complexity Carter was actually dealing with. Inside that tomb, he found 4 large rooms built right into the next. Inside those, there were 4 massive wooden shrines placed so tightly within each other they were barely an inch apart. Inside those, 4 sarcophagi nested like giant Russian matryoshka dolls. And finally, in the very center of the whole shebang, the iconic golden mask and the mummy itself. Carter had to meticulously and painstakingly dismantle all of this.
But okay, here is the incredibly sobering reality of early 20th century archaeology. Carter's excavation wasn't exactly delicate. Because the ancient embalmers used a really heavy resin, the golden mask was stuck fast to the body. To get it off, Carter literally ripped the mask from Tutankhamun's face. He completely severed the head and roughly disassembled the body into parts. In fact, modern analysis by Professor Rulli in Zurich showed that many of the physical injuries previously thought to be from, say, an ancient chariot accident were actually just caused by Carter's extremely rough handling in the 1920s. No ancient chariot crash, just bad archaeology.
So, the crucial point here is that we have to separate the myth from the science. On one side, you have the Pharaoh's curse, a story of sinister, magical powers and 17 mysterious deaths. But that turned out to be a massive media PR stunt designed purely to sell newspapers. The majority of the people associated with the dig actually died of completely natural causes later on. On the other side, we have the stark scientific reality, uncovered by state-of-the-art DNA analysis. Tutankhamun wasn't some cursed, magical figure. He was actually a tragic young man, born of an incestuous lineage, who died around age 19, suffering from severe genetic defects and an acute malaria infection.
I really want you to focus on this number for a second, 130.
Archaeologists found exactly 130 walking canes inside Tutankhamun's tomb. I mean, think about that. This is hard physical evidence supporting those modern DNA findings that the supposedly cursed, all-powerful king actually suffered from a painful congenital clubfoot. He literally needed those canes just to walk around. It really grounds this mythical, larger-than-life pharaoh back into a fragile, very human reality, doesn't it?
Atlantis, a lost city. Let's pivot from the dry deserts of ancient Egypt to the legendary watery depths of the ocean.
So the basic myth of Atlantis originates with the Greek philosopher Plato, way back around 360 BC. He described a splendid, unbelievably wealthy island nation consisting of concentric rings. According to him, it was a highly advanced civilization that ruled the entire Mediterranean region a whopping 9,000 years earlier. But as the legend goes, the Atlanteans grew arrogant, and the gods completely wiped them out in a dramatic, watery catastrophe as a brutal punishment for their hubris.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is seeing how modern researchers are actively trying to geographically locate this ancient myth, and we have two wildly different theories currently under investigation. On the left, we've got geologist Evie Namaku championing the Santorini theory in Greece. She points to a massive volcanic explosion 3,600 years ago that collapsed an island and shaped the underwater lava morphology. On the right, U.S. researcher Richard Friend focuses on southern Spain just past the Strait of Gibraltar. He believes the ancient coastline shifted over centuries and actually buried a hidden harbor under what is today's Doñana National Park.
Let's look a little bit closer at that Santorini evidence. Evie Namaku is using incredible modern technology, specifically sending a small underwater robot named Jason down to explore the seafloor. Now, the island above already has that distinct ring-like structure Plato described. But the most tantalizing clue? Her team has actually discovered mysterious underwater stairs on the seafloor. It totally leaves you wondering, are these submerged steps the man-made entrance to a sunken city, or just the highly unusual geometric product of volcanic nature? Meanwhile, the totally contrasting Spanish theory has its own wildly compelling physical clues. Over in the protected parklands of southern Spain, Richard Friend has been examining an unfinished 1920s excavation site. And guess what he found? Rock formations sticking out of the ground that feature perfect right angles. As Friend rightly points out, you just don't find perfect right angles naturally occurring in nature. They have to be man-made. While we obviously don't have definitive proof corroborating either theory entirely just yet, clues like this perfect right angle keep the hope of a massive historical discovery very much alive.
Why do we seek mysteries? Whether we're digging up pharaohs or hunting for sunken cities, what is the underlying human psychology connecting all these searches?
Well, these stories actually serve an incredibly powerful dual purpose in human history. On one level, like with Atlantis, they act as profound philosophical warnings. It's a classic story of hubris, right? Reminding us not to get too arrogant with our own advanced civilization, lest we face total disaster. On another level, like with King Tut's curse, they act as absolutely brilliant PR stunts. Sensationalized mysteries deliberately amplified to sell newspapers and captivate audiences. But whether they're born of an ancient philosopher's warning or a 1920s media frenzy, these stories endure because they connect us profoundly to our past.
So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to ponder. Now that you know the truth, that the terrifying cursed king was actually a fragile young man who needed 130 canes to walk, and that the magical city of Atlantis might literally be the sunken geological remains of an ancient volcanic eruption, is the scientific reality actually more fascinating than the myths themselves? I tend to think it absolutely is. The real, tangible history hiding behind our greatest legends proves that the truth is always out there, waiting for those focused and curious enough to keep digging. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking those big questions, and I'll see you on the next one.